My name is John Morick, and I'm the head of product and strategy for our U.S. government clearance and collateral management business. We're here to introduce you to a problem related to the 2008 financial crisis. The problem and our solution were for the U.S. tri-party repo market. A repo is a collateralized loan between two parties. While the market is not well known, it provides $1.6 trillion in short-term financing to the capital markets. Advanced operations research techniques were central to the solution. We're here to explain our role as a market leader and how we innovated to solve the problem.
BNY Mellon has been committed to innovation, or we wouldn't be 230 years old. We have had to change as the markets have changed. A great example of innovation came out of a big industry problem. It had to do with tri-party repo reform. At the time of the financial crisis, intraday credit created instability in the markets.
A tri-party repo transaction is essentially a secured loan. BNY Mellon's role is to be the tri-party collateral agent, to provide the settlement, the custody, the pricing, and the eligibility screening such that both the dealer and the investor get what they both entered into in terms of the collateral. The industry came together, and there was a task force of industry participants, and they came up with a series of recommendations. But at its essence was to make the repo market a safer and sound market, really to engender confidence and to allow the banking system to function even in times of duress. The reduction in secured credit over a period of 4 years was in the magnitude of $1.4 trillion.
The most challenging problem to solve was the development of a settlement algorithm to solve a mixed integer linear program with close to 20 million variables, a highly challenging mathematical problem to solve. The algorithm had to complete within a short window of time to allow the tri-party repo market to continue to operate efficiently. To accomplish this, we developed a series of algorithms on a massively parallel architecture. I am proud to say that the algorithm runs every day, settles billions of dollars, and meets the technical, business, and industry objectives.
The reason why this program was so successful was that BNY Mellon, its institutional investor clients, the broker-dealers, our regulators all had a vested interest in the modernization of the repo markets. The removal of that intraday risk benefited the clearing banks, one of which is BNY Mellon. It benefited the investors. And then finally, it actually allows the market to grow because people have regained confidence in how it will perform in the event of a future crisis. The growth opportunities for this business are significant. Some of the new tools that we've brought out, such as collateral optimization, that tool has applicability both to our buy-side and our sell-side clients, and it has applicability globally in addition to domestically. In our view, it's going to revolutionize collateral management. The applicability for the business globally and the new market entrants have made this exciting and an opportunity for growth for BNY Mellon.
I'm proud to say that I've worked closely with those executives you saw, our program steering committee chairman, Karen Peets, who's president of the bank, and our CEO of Broker-Dealer Services, Brian Ruan. Karen and Brian just shared their views in that video you saw. Now let's get into some of the details of the tri-party repo market. BNY Mellon is the largest provider of tri-party repo settlement services in the U.S. and settles approximately 85% of the U.S. tri-party repo market transactions. We are also the largest provider of those services in the world. You can say that we run and maintain the infrastructure to a most critical piece of the global financial industry. We're also a trusted third-party bank with a strong balance sheet, and we service this market from locations around the world. All of this allows our clients to be protected 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, while transacting these critical financial transactions. So let me give you some historical background. Tri-party repo transactions began some 30 years ago on a very small scale with one dealer, one investor, and one agent settling just one transaction. This market was developed to automate and secure a fairly manual and resource-intensive transaction called a repo. BNY Mellon became an agent in this market to do most of the operational processing. Investors and dealers like to transact trades. They simply don't like to perform the settlement that goes along with those processing of trades. So tri-party repo was born. Over the years, the market has evolved. In the U.S. alone today, hundreds of counterparties transact thousands of trades valued at approximately $1.6 trillion in tri-party repo. So what is a repo? Dealers need cash to fund their operations and trading activity. They use repos to raise that funding. As described in the video, a repo, or repurchase agreement, is a lending transaction in which the dealer borrows cash and gives securities as collateral to the investor, with a promise to repurchase that collateral at a later date, returning the cash borrowed plus interest. The securities used as collateral are often of high quality, like U.S. Treasuries. An investor has the title to those securities. Repos can be overnight, where cash is borrowed for one day, or term, where cash is borrowed for an extended period of time. If you're an investor, you typically receive a higher interest rate for longer borrowing terms. Lastly, these transactions are initiated and settled all within one business day. So who are the parties involved? The two parties involved in a repo transaction as the principals are the investor, those with cash to lend, and the dealer, those who need cash. Large investors in repo are the traditional money managers like Fidelity, Federated, and BlackRock. Dealers are typically the large investment banks such as Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, and B of A Merrill Lynch. Many repos are settled as tri-party repos in which a third-party settlement agent like BNY Mellon handles the exchange of the cash and securities on behalf of the dealer and investor. So what was the problem we were trying to solve? On the maturity date of the repo, the dealer is obligated to pay back the investor their principal and interest, but the dealer often does not have the funds to do so until they raise new funding. As an analogy, imagine that you had a credit card bill due at 8:30 in the morning, but were not getting paid by your employer until 3:30 in the afternoon. You would need a temporary intraday loan from another party to help you satisfy your credit card obligation, and then once you got paid, you'd be able to pay back your temporary loan. Such was the case in the tri-party repo market. As the market evolved, our clients became dependent on BNY Mellon to provide large amounts of intraday loans to allow the dealer to meet their maturing obligations and pay back their investors. Later in the same business day, the dealer would raise new funding from new investors and pay back BNY Mellon. As the market grew, the amount of intraday loans that BNY Mellon provided to the market exceeded $1 trillion a day. That was secured by collateral that we held. However, as we see in times of market disruption, the value of that collateral can quickly devalue. Solving the problem meant reducing, in fact, practically eliminating the amount of intraday credit we provided and creating a market that was essentially dealer self-funded, using only small amounts of credit from BNY Mellon. You might ask why this was a problem for the market. It was an issue for the market for three main reasons. One, the amount of secured intraday loans on the books of BNY Mellon became outsized. Two, investors became accustomed to getting paid their maturity proceeds first thing in the morning. And three, the dealers became accustomed to receiving temporary intraday loans even though they were not committed by the bank, meaning that they could be pulled at any time. Imagine the disruption if we decided to reduce or eliminate the amount of loans we were willing to provide on a given business day. Just imagine the impact to you if you were not able to make your credit card payment. The market would be disrupted, as dealers would not be able to meet their maturity obligations, and that would put undue stress on the market and the parties involved. After the financial crisis, these systemic risks became apparent to the market and its regulators, like the Federal Reserve. A tri-party repo task force was formed to make recommendations specifically around reducing that systemic risk and making this a more stable and resilient market, especially in times of financial stress. So why was it so complex? The solution was complex for multiple reasons. One, the technology changes that we were making needed to have minimal impact to the technology of the 100 other participants in the market. Otherwise, we never would have met our timelines. And secondly, the changes to the funding model, moving from one where temporary intraday loans were provided by the bank to a dealer self-funded model, could not lead to a market disruption. and the solution had to be implemented while the market was still operating. Imagine trying to change the tires on a moving car. Add on the importance of the repo market, and the result is a very complex series of implementations that required the utmost in collaboration, diligence, and oversight. I'm glad to say we were able to accomplish these tasks and now have a more sustainable and resilient tri-party repo market because of it. I'd like to now turn over our presentation to Erica Lunsford, who will begin to outline our solutions for you. Thanks.
Excuse me. Hi, my name's Erica Lunsford, and I was the program manager for Tri-Party Repo Reform. $1.4 trillion secured intraday credit is an impressive number. But what does it mean to those of us who invest and need a job? Tri-party repo relates to you and me because it is important to individual investors and the capital markets. The investors are the firms that manage the investments for all of us, such as Fidelity, Vanguard, and BlackRock. There are many other household names like this. They manage our 401k accounts so that we can retire comfortably, our 529 accounts so that our children can receive an education, our small business accounts, and other financial goals that we have. Some of those investments are financing tri-party repos. We know how our money is going to be invested because of the prospectus. In this example, it says the money market fund will invest in cash and U.S. Treasury securities with 0.5% of other. BNY Mellon's tri-party rule sets enforce the investment objectives of the prospectus. Currently, there are thousands of these. The investor is investing money on behalf of us by lending it to the dealers. This is the tri-party trade that John described. From the investor point of view, there are objectives that must be met. The investor's portfolio must always meet the investment objectives and be fully collateralized. We needed to limit the secured intraday credit that was provided to all of the dealers in order to repay all of their maturing tri-party repos. Tri-party repo reform changed this. Now, if a dealer were in a situation where they could not repay all of their maturities, some investors would get repaid and some would need to sell the securities directly in the marketplace. As part of the reform, we needed to implement a repayment sequence as part of the new settlement cycle. In this market, the least risky assets are repurchased first, such as U.S. Treasuries prior to stocks or corporate bonds. Today, the investors understand the response from the market if a dealer is under stress. So how does capital markets relate to you and me? Capital markets finances the products and services our country makes and delivers. This allows our country to function, provide growth and job opportunities. There is an operational competing demand for securities between capital markets and tri-party repo. The securities need to be mobilized or released from tri-party repo. The dealers then are able to deliver the securities sold and receive new securities bought. The new securities need to be allocated into existing and new settled tri-party trades. These objectives drove the operation research techniques chosen by understanding the competing needs of the market. So now let me talk to you about what those processes were and how they evolved. Prior to the reform, the operational model used many discrete processes and changed organically as volumes increased. At 8 o'clock in the morning, BNY Mellon would mobilize the securities in support of the dealer's capital markets activities. This was done by repaying maturing trades and lending on the dealer's securities that were not in maturing trades. The investor was collateralized from the cash provided by BNY Mellon. Late in the afternoon, investors and dealers would invest in new trades, and the dealers would reallocate their securities to collateralize both new investments and to maintain existing investments. These processes extinguished the use of intraday credit and repay BNY Mellon's secured intraday loans. This operational model did not limit secured intraday credit. And there was no need to enforce a repayment sequence because all of the tri-party repos were repaid to all of the investors in the morning. Now, the new operational process adds a foundational requirement: limit secured intraday credit. This is accomplished intraday by alternating the mobilization of securities and the reallocation of securities to minimize the need for cash and credit. The repayment of maturing trades was moved to the end of the day and occurs at the same time as settling new trades. BNY Mellon's new settlement process provided liquidity savings to the dealers compared to the dealers needing to pre-fund 100% of maturing trades. Complexity was added by requiring this limitation of secured intraday credit and also enforcing that repayment sequence for us. The solution we developed uses new trades to fund maturing trades through netting. Once the settlement process is completed for a dealer, the dealer can then reallocate securities to meet the investor's needs, extinguish the use of liquidity, and meet its capitalization requirements with the remainder of collateral. This new process has the benefits of 1, providing transparency to the investor, 2, limiting the cost to the industry, and 3, limiting the secured intraday credit. So what did we create in order to deliver the solution? We created new allocation products allowing these competing processes to work in concert. CPO-SA is a settlement algorithm that creates settlement instructions for maturing trades to be repaid and new trades needing collateral to provide funding. It controls the execution of the instructions based upon the committed credit and cash the dealer provides. It pens instructions until all of the settlement has occurred. Once the settlement process is completed, the dealer can now reallocate collateral to trades. So continuous portfolio optimization, CPO, and rebalancing reallocate collateral to trades and minimize the use of intraday credit. They are used during the day as well as after the settlement process is completed. The difference is that CPO calculates where the collateral belongs automatically, and rebalancing allows the user to simulate scenarios in projected mode. Both of these adhere to the principles of keeping the investor fully collateralized and abiding by its investment objectives. Both CPO and rebalancing reduce the amount of intraday credit and dealer cash needed to move the collateral from one investor to another on an incremental basis. For example, if you had a bookcase and wanted to switch some of the books on one shelf with books on another, you could do this by taking all of the books out of both shelves and then putting them onto the targeted shelf. Or you could take out one book on each shelf and switch them. In this case, each book represents a piece of collateral. And when collateral is removed, it causes intraday credit exposure. Our operations research-based solution eliminated this intraday credit exposure. So Brian Blank is now going to explain the technical solution that delivered these components.
Hi, my name is Brian Blank, and I'm the Chief Architect for the collateral management platform that includes the Tri-Party Reform solution. Today I'm going to walk you through the details of the technical solution related to optimization that we developed using advanced operations research techniques. What is the solution? In developing the solution, we designed 2 types of optimization algorithms that are used across 3 different products. End-state optimization is used to identify the best usage of collateral at the point in time that it is executed. Transition state optimization identifies an ordering of the instructions to transform the portfolio from the current start state to an end state determined by end state optimization, or in the case of rebalancing via a largely manual method. CPO settlement algorithm uses end state optimization to calculate the optimal usage of the collateral at the time of execution in an automated manner. The settlement algorithm attempts to freeze most of the collateral where it is already allocated. Its primary purpose is to net the settlement process on our domestic U.S. platform at 3:30 p.m., moving collateral from maturing repo trades to new trades, and moving cash from the new repo trades to the maturing trades. Once the settlement instructions are created, they are executed upon the availability of liquidity, either from the new investors or possibly from the dealer providing their own cash to settle the maturing obligations. CPO is used to re-optimize the dealer's portfolio at the time of execution. CPO is used earlier in the day to fully collateralize trades and remove excess and ineligible collateral from trades. CPO is used later in the day to re-optimize the dealer's end-of-day portfolio. Some dealers continue to use legacy allocation methods to top off their trades to re-optimize the usage of their collateral. Rebalancing was developed to facilitate operational efficiencies. The dealer would reallocate their portfolio in a sandbox we call projected mode without touching their live mode allocations. When the dealer is satisfied with their allocations in projected mode, they would execute a copy to live function of rebalancing. Rebalancing uses transition state optimization to determine the correct ordering of the instructions to play in live mode, transitioning the live mode portfolio from its starting state to its target state defined in projected mode in a manner that reduces cash utilization during transition. What makes our solution unique? There are 3 reasons why our solution is unique compared to previous solutions. First, this is the first time that anyone is using a mixed integer linear program to net settlement instructions and reduce liquidity requirements for the tri-party repos. Second, this is the first time that anyone is using transition state optimization to help reduce cash and credit utilization during transition of the portfolio from starting state to its target state. And third, the end state optimization algorithm is using a column generation technique to improve performance. The method we use to transform the continuous solution provided by column generation into an integer solution gives us the performance benefits of column generation techniques on a very large mixed integer linear program. What are the objective functions used in end state optimization? Now let me walk you through the details of end state optimization algorithm used by CPO and settlement algorithm to identify the optimal usage of collateral. End state optimization uses 2 objective functions where the solution from the first objective function is fixed while solving for the second objective function. Here's an example for the first objective function to minimize amount short. As stated earlier, a tri-party repo trade represents a collateralized loan between a dealer and an investor. Here is a bipartite graph representing the set of collateral owned by the dealer and the set of trades representing the loans provided by the investor. The edges between the 2 sets represent eligibility of collateral as specified in advance by the investor. The goal of the allocation process is similar to the cutting stock problem in that we are trying to fit all of the collateral into trades of varying sizes. To fully collateralize all the trades in this example, we must allocate collateral number 2 to trade B following the blue edges. If we allocate it along the gold edge, trade B would be left short as position number 1 is not eligible to trade B. This defines one of our objective functions to minimize the amount short, which in turn reduces the exposure to the trades. Here's an example showing the second objective function, cost of carry. Cost of carry is defined by the dealer as a relative ranking scale, allowing the dealer to define priority of collateral to be allocated. In this example, there are 2 positions eligible to the same trade. The dealer determined that position number 1 is preferred to be allocated to trade A in place of position number 2 due to regulatory or internal capitalization needs. By defining a lower cost of carry for position number 1, end state optimization would try to allocate position number 1 to trade A before allocating position number 2. We now define the second objective function to minimize weighted average cost of carry. Cost of carry is driven by regulatory and internal capitalization requirements that are defined by the dealer. By replacing the cost of carry matrix with another, the dealer can then optimize their portfolio against different internal or regulatory requirements, making this solution and underlying math model transportable to new internal and regulatory requirements in the future by simply providing a new cost of carry matrix. In fact, we already have one new and recent use case now implemented in our production environment where the existing model and solution was reused to solve for a new regulatory requirement called liquidity coverage ratio, or LCR, in which assets that are considered more liquid are to be allocated to trades with shorter-term maturity dates. Additional objectives and constraints are referenced in our paper. What are the variables that we're using in optimization? We define a semi-integer variable to represent the number of units of collateral to allocate to a given trade. Note that an additional row is added at the end of the set of collateral to represent cash as collateral. Cash is implemented as a soft constraint that penalizes the objective function so that cash is used last to collateralize the trade. How does our solution scale? The examples I provided so far have been small in order to illustrate the concepts. However, when we scale up to the problem to real-world portfolios, we're solving a massive mixed integer linear programming involving 10 to 20 million variables and hundreds of thousands of constraints for each of the largest portfolios. Solving mixed integer linear programs of this size requires the use of various techniques to solve within a reasonable amount of time. We use scaling and column generation techniques to achieve this. Column generation techniques only work with continuous problems. To get around this limitation, we slightly increase the value of the loan amount during the column generation process and reduce the continuous solution down to an integer solution after column generation algorithm completes. Any shortages are then dealt with by running the LP solver in pure integer mode to solve for the difference, which is a much smaller problem to solve. How is transition state optimization implemented? Previously, we discussed end state optimization, which is looking for the best usage of collateral to help minimize the objective functions discussed. Transition state optimization is responsible for the ordering of the collateral to transition the portfolio from its start state to a target state defined by end state optimization. This is similar to a transportation problem. In this small example, we are trying to replace a piece of collateral worth $100 with another piece of collateral also worth $100. If we were to substitute the gold position first, then the trade would be short by $100, requiring us to temporarily place cash into the trade in place of the collateral. If we allocated the blue position first, then we would reduce the size of our lienable collateral, potentially creating exposure risk for BNY Mellon. To achieve our goal to reduce cash utilization during transition, our transition state algorithm includes, first, breaking up the position movements into smaller position movements. Second, allocating and substituting collateral in a single transaction to net the exposure. And third, allowing up to 1,000 position movements per transaction. Supporting these large transactions also allows us to improve performance of the application. During transition state optimization, we define two objective functions to minimize the use of cash and lienable collateral. Today, we solve this optimization using a decision analysis algorithm. Statistics are gathered up front that are used to drive the ordering of the instructions throughout the transition. I am grateful to have been introduced to operations research techniques early in the program. We would not have achieved our goals without these solutions. Now, I would like to introduce Kevin Fedigan, who will provide more details of our implementation strategy.
Good morning. My name is Kevin Fedigan, and I'm a Divisional Chief Information Officer at BNY Mellon. And I was proud to be a part of the team that oversaw the technology tasked with delivering the Tri-Party Repo Reform Program. I'll be sharing with you some of the keys to our success in meeting this commitment. At the outset of the program, it was made clear to us that we had to come up with a plan that would address the risks outlined by Erica and John, all without creating any market disruption to this critical marketplace. Given the size of the industry problem and the focus from our regulators towards a speedy resolution, needless to say, we were asked to deliver and commit to a schedule as quickly as possible. In fact, our president and executive sponsor, Karen Peets, who you saw in the video, had to testify in front of a banking subcommittee of the U.S. Senate with our commitment. The first ingredient to our success was to make the necessary investments in the right talent. We assembled top engineers throughout the company and also brought expertise from the outside to help with those complex operations research problems that Brian spoke about. We engaged with experts in the fields of linear programming as well as those with advanced mathematics and quantitative skills. We devised a program that would reduce the intraday credit risk over a series of product releases, then with a big bang approach. We committed to complete our program over a 3-year time frame. Another key to success is that we ensured each release gave the market participants enough time to test our solution, but also to assess their own operational readiness. Each deliverable also was configured to be able to be turned on or off should the need arise to revert back to the legacy workflow, a technique we use to avoid that market disruption. We use BNY Mellon's big data platform called Digital Pulse to instrument existing workflows so that we could see the effects of our changes both from a business and a technology lens. We knew that the solutions that Brian spoke about would be the most challenging deliverables. So we started engineering these solutions at the very outset of the program, even though the capabilities weren't intended to be used towards the end. In retrospect, this was very important as the settlement algorithm that Brian spoke to you about, the very first iterations couldn't even complete within a 24-hour window, yet alone meet our business requirements of needing to complete within 30 minutes or less. It was hugely beneficial for us to develop data-driven insights that we could share with the market participants. Real-time dashboards were developed from our Digital Pulse big data platform to ensure the business service delivery teams, as well as technology, could assess the operational workflows, as well as we could look at the system performance. The slide represents dashboards used by BNY Mellon Service Delivery to review credit, liquidity, and as well as collateral holdings. We also shared a client scorecard of their CPO/SA runs so that they could understand how their business actions correlated to their operational performance. These insights provided us with the details necessary during interim state so that we could make any course correction before our final end state. I'm very happy to report that the solutions delivered on our promise and are working well every day. Rebalancing, CPO, and CPO/SA run about 1,000 times a day across our global book to optimize, reallocate, and rebalance close to $1.8 trillion worth of clients' collaterals. Clients are able to use rebalancing and CPO themselves, whereas BNY Mellon Service Delivery executes the majority of CPO/SA runs on behalf of the dealers, but some have also recently started to use it themselves. I'm very proud of what this team has accomplished under very tight deadlines and scrutiny, with constant oversight throughout by our executive committee, our board of directors, our clients, and our regulators. Now I'm going to introduce you to Andrea Fenning, our Chief Operating Officer for Broker-Dealer Services, who will be sharing some of her comments. Regrettably, Andrea was not able to join us due to conflicts with a board meeting that she's presenting at as we speak.
The tri-party repo market in its entirety is about $2.2 trillion. That represents both what we have here in the United States as well as what the program is globally. In the United States, the program is $1.6 trillion, of which BNY Mellon supports $1.3 trillion. The clients were really active participants in the entirety of the project, and they provided a lot of terrific input in terms of what we were planning to develop, how we were looking to reduce the intraday exposure, in terms of what their processes are. We had roundtables where we invited clients and we would present what our plans were and what our timeline was, and then they would just provide input in terms of, what we could tweak here and there. We also had user groups where we sat down with clients in a more intimate setting, and we really went through in detail the technology that we were planning to develop, and they provided really a lot of good insight into what we should be thinking about and what we might be able to do a little bit differently. So I would say it was definitely a partnership. The biggest benefit for BNY Mellon was the reduction of the intraday credit. We had been extending upwards of $1.3 trillion on a daily basis. It was secured at all times, but nonetheless, that was quite a bit of intraday credit. The regulators were really looking for us to reduce that to no more than 10%. And we were able to achieve that through all the technology that we had developed, as well as working very closely with our customers. And it was really beneficial not only for ourselves, but for our clients, because they were also under similar constraints by the regulators to reduce the amount of exposure that they needed from us to get their business done. So our ability to reduce that through some of the great technology that we developed was a win-win for both of us. Probably the most benefit they received was from the whole optimization engine that we built into the tri-party process. Part of it was built into the actual allocation process of the transactions that we do, and they were able to save quite a bit of money in the sense that they had excess collateral left over after the optimization ran. And when you have excess collateral left over as a broker-dealer, you can use that collateral for other things to make more money. So in some instances, we had clients that had relatively large books of collateral, and they had excesses of sometimes up to $5 billion. And then there's the rebalancing process that actually allows clients to rebalance their portfolios and then allocate collateral to their deals. So the entire process just created a lot of efficiencies through both operational processes at the end of the day, as well as really collateral optimization intraday. And I think the tools that we provided to clients were really important, and again, just gave them an opportunity to see us in a different light as more of a technology innovator rather than just a processing institution. BNY Mellon is delighted to have been selected as a finalist in this competition. We are honored to have been included, and we wanted to thank Informs and the judges for this opportunity.
As you can see, it was very challenging to make the required business process and technology changes discussed today while keeping the market running at its normal pace. Remember the changing the tires on a moving car analogy? But by using the operations research technology, we accomplished our goals and have many benefits to show for it. The market is now functioning with drastically lower amounts of intraday credit provided by BNY Mellon. We have, in fact, exceeded the Tri-Party Repo Task Force tenet of practical elimination of intraday credit. Now, intraday tri-party obligations are dealer-funded or supported by limited BNY Mellon credit on a committed basis only. Rebalancing allowed us to reduce upwards of $130 billion in intraday credit risk, and the three products of rebalancing, CPO, and CPO-SA allowed our clients to continue to fund their operations and reduce the reliance on intraday credit that we provide. CPO helped our global dealers increase their excess collateral by some $5 billion, which directly lowered their funding costs by an estimated $200 million annually across our client base. CPO-SA further reduced borrowing costs for our clients. The less clients need to borrow from us, the greater their savings. Estimates show that those savings are as high as $160 million annually for all our dealers combined. And lastly, for transparency and fairness, CPO-SA provides an industry-prescribed settlement order to ensure that all participants are treated equally during the maturity repayment process. Our paper further describes all the benefits and how they are calculated. To highlight the benefits our clients have received, we have a few quotes from several of our clients and the CEO of Broker Dealer Services, Brian Rawan. A large bank client speaks of rebalancing and CPO-SA. Without these advanced tools, it would have been impossible to reach the industry's stated tri-party reform-related goals. HSBC Bank says CPO's performance and speed allows them to adjust their allocation strategy intraday. Maintaining the various capital regulatory ratios and projecting collateral allocations are extremely important in demonstrating the bank's risk management capabilities. And B of A Merrill tells us how new CPO algorithm functionality allowed them to manage their allocations more efficiently while at the same time reducing processing times. Lastly, Brian Rawan, the CEO for our division, Broker Dealer Services, talks about both the internal and industry collaboration which led to these solutions. Due to a board meeting today, Brian regrettably was not able to meet with us today. So on behalf of BNY Mellon, we wish to thank Informs and the judges for being selected as a finalist in today's competition, and we appreciate the opportunity to present. Thank you.